Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and today our interesting subject is around the changes that can happen in women over 40 in terms of creativity, creative life force, and desire. And they're actually connected in ways that we might be surprised about. We often hear about how things can change as we get older, hormonal changes, and many others. And a lot of times it kind of gets talked about as almost like a state of decline. But the interesting thing is that it's almost more like a remodeling process. But there are some really specific things that do shift that have an impact on our creative sense of ourselves, our creative life force, and also our experience with desire. And I mean desire in this case in the more broad context, desire in general for all things. One of the pieces that changes, among others, is hormone estrogen. It's not just related to reproduction, it's actually a neuromodulator that has an impact on many different systems. Neurons, blood vessels throughout the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is related to thinking and focus and decision making and planning. And it actually helps to keep blood flow by stimulating nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, basically just meaning that it makes the blood vessels expand and allows more blood flow to the brain. And it also inhibits some specific enzymes that typically break down some of our other neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. And those things all affect our mood. So for example, serotonin, when that destabilizes, which is one of the things that happens as estrogen drops, there can be an elevated risk of things like depression and anxiety, low mood, feeling kind of emotionally fragile, and also a sense that the baseline has changed. The baseline mood feels different. And then with dopamine, there's a shift in the reward system, the motivation system. So dopamine tends to drive our desire towards moving closer to goals, experiencing desire for things, looking forward to things, anticipating things. And so when estrogen drops, and therefore through complicated mechanisms the dopamine may drop, the specific ability to feel a pull towards things can also come down, reducing motivation, creating some trouble concentrating, brain fog, and a sense of flatness. And then the norepinephrine can become dysregulated in a different way to where it spikes, causing some of those hot flashes, a sensation of being wired but tired, waking up too early, waking up at the wrong times, waking up without enough rest, and a feeling of being over alert and under rested at the same time. There are also changes to progesterone, and that can interact with the modulator of GABA. So when progesterone falls, GABA loses its amplifier. There can be higher levels of anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, sleep issues, in a sense that we've lost the ability to wind down and relax. And then testosterone, which also can gradually decline with age, contributes to desire and interest. And when we take all of these hormone pieces put together, the overall experience can be a bit daunting, and there's genuine differences in the way the neurotransmitters are functioning for us. But even with all of these changes, which often get depicted fairly negatively, and understandably so, because experiencing all of those changes at one time can be very overwhelming, and because it also affects mood, the capacity to manage the emotions around some of those changes can be extra challenging. But reframing it as remodeling rather than declining, understanding that the brain is essentially reorganizing itself in different ways to step into the next phase of life. There are measurable shifts in structure, in connectivity, in energy metabolism. It's also variable. It's not necessarily that every person will have the same experience. There's many variables that will have an influence, including genetics and mental health history and stress load, sleep, as well as individual choices and, how one manages various different things that are happening. One of the disruptions that can be more noticeable is around the reward system, the motivation to pursue things, and in particular, the pleasure and the interest, the desire in pursuing things. It can manifest as a reduction in the desire for projects, starting things, going places, seeing people, and specific interactions, including intimate interactions. And it can feel like things have kind of gone a little bit flat. But there are steps that can be taken to counteract some of that decrease by choosing desire with attention and intention. So a reward wanting system, which is largely regulated by dopamine, it's desire, it's anticipation, it's feeling drawn towards something. It's our motivation to move in a particular direction. And that can be relevant whether we're talking about desire for a person, a relationship, intimacy, or desire for projects, activities. And sometimes when we can cultivate that spark in one aspect of life, it can translate into the others because it's a neural pathway that we're building. It's like a behavioral activation. So rather than waiting until a moment where you feel like doing the rewarding thing, an activity, a hobby, a project, creating something new, since the wanting system, the dopamine system, may feel flatter, may feel like it's a little bit more offline. Instead, making the intentional choice to cultivate that, to schedule it, to choose it, to deliberately make it a point to go and participate in that activity. And in doing that, it may increase some of those under-firing reward circuits. It's kind of like exercise, working out to bring that system back online and rewire the brain in a way that it understands the shift that is being done on purpose. And then having goals around it, orienting towards positive experiences. So making intentional choices to move your life in a direction that gets you closer to a feeling of growth or development or even having fun and enjoying things can actually help buffer against some of the so-called decline in desire and naturally enhance desire. So it's pleasure being used deliberately and intentionally, not waiting for it to arouse on its own, but making a point to incorporate pleasurable things, reading something that you really enjoy, a really good book, or watching something, a movie that inspires you or gets you excited or engaged, booking a trip, planning something enjoyable, something relaxing. It could be alone or with someone else. And also allowing yourself to daydream, allowing yourself to experience looking forward to that thing, to fantasize about that thing, to kind of build it in your mind before going into the experience and sort of laying the tracks of that desire. Because the dopamine system with desire specifically is more about anticipation than actually receiving the reward. So we're building that wanting, desiring system, rebuilding that pull towards pleasure and joy. And another way of doing this is through creating. And it can have a very interesting meaning, I think, in particular for women, but certainly for anyone. But women over a particular age who are no longer in the act of creating other lives, shifting into this different kind of creativity that can be tied to projects and things that they are bringing forth into the world in a different way. The drive to create something can run on those similar dopamine-based systems, firing on possibility. There is this thing that does not yet exist, and I can bring it into being. And that creative urge can help to fuel that same engine in building that desire, giving that mechanism kind of like a target to focus in on. So whatever type of creation that might look like, creating art, writing a book, making something for a small business, creating content, designing different things, creating music. Everybody obviously has different interests and different skills and different ways that this could manifest. It could be a garden, it could be a body of work, it could be creating something that's more abstract, like building a business, and having a focus for that desire to build. And those new creations become like little hatchlings that are essentially being birthed into the world and creating a legacy, which is another goal that tends to crop up as one gets older. And this whole system that we're talking about strengthens with use. Again, like working out like a muscle, where building it intentionally and with purpose over time strengthen some of these neural pathways that allow it to become easier and easier the more we do it. So the two layers that we're looking at are pleasure and then that creative energy, merging those things together and allowing that remodeling process that's happening in terms of the hormones and the differences in the neurotransmitters, working with that new system as it's reforming itself by stepping into choices with more intention and doing more things on purpose, scheduling, planning, looking forward to various different activities can really make a big difference in terms of navigating through some of those changes and allowing that life force, that creative life force, that sense of desire, that sense of being pulled towards something, essentially the reason that you get out of bed every day, something that you're looking forward to and experiencing a desire to do or to become or to feel or experience. And it can help to add back some of the magic. So I hope you found this to be interesting and helpful. And if you are looking for different types of mood boosters, I do offer a series of mindset tools, including things like hypnosis audios, which can help to shift and transform our belief systems and our thought patterns, as well as offer some lovely deep relaxation, as well as yoga nidra, which does much of the same, particularly centered around relaxation and resting and rejuvenating our brain. Little meditation audios and visualization practices, which can be very helpful as we are visualizing that future that we're trying to create. And all of those things are available in the Hypno-Pothecary, known as the Poth, and that information is in the show notes. Until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at ravenmosaic.com.